Dreams, the only sanctuary where one's actions have no consequence and one's morals have no conscience. Chapter 20. The laughter came walking back up the road with a stick. Evan was so wrapped up in the disclosure of the identity of the old gentleman and the aloof lady that as they crossed the road it never entered his head as to how Woody was still asleep on the bench which had somehow ended up at the bottom of the second hill. He set himself down on the bench with a bit of a thump. The vibration woke the youngster up. "Oh," he cried as he jumped, "what an awful dream I was having. I'm glad you woke me up. I dreamt that I was falling through the air. Falling. I thought I would never stop falling. Have you ever had a dream like that?" he asked of Evan. "Of course you have, if I have. Silly me." Woody continued with the topic of dreams. "I wonder what it would feel like if you hit the ground after falling such a long way." "It would hurt, really hurt," Evan assured him. "Yes, I suppose it would, but it wouldn't matter if it was just a dream. It wouldn't matter how many bones you broke or how much you cut yourself, because when you woke up, everything would be all right." Evan smiled at the boy's observation and reached out to his young self. He placed his hand on the boy's head and ruffled his hair around, saying, as he did, "Yes, you're right. You can do anything you like in dreams, and nobody gets hurt." He could have almost convinced himself of the possibility that his trip was a dream, with the lack of permanent injury which he seemed to have avoided. As he removed his hand now from Woody's head back towards himself, he noticed that the tip of his thumb now possessed an almost circular scar, which had not been there prior to his trip. "Ah, dreams," said Fate, "the only sanctuary where one's actions have no consequence and one's morals have no conscience." "Did you get to where you were going?" asked Woody, interrupting Evan's thoughts and Fate's philosophizing. "The past, wasn't it?" Evan then remembered that he had a bone to pick with a certain somebody. "I want a word with you," he said, trying to sound serious as he accused Fate of sending him on a wild goose chase. "All the time that I was walking and walking and walking, you were waiting here, taking it nice and easy, knowing that I wasn't going anywhere." He waited for Fate to reply, to rebuff the accusation and defend himself. Fate did not bother and simply asked him if he had learned anything from his trip. Fate then burst into laughter as the word trip adopted a double meaning. "Trip, do you get it? Trip." Then he laughed some more. Fate was laughing so much that Evan's feigned anger could no longer continue with its game of pretense, and he joined in with Fate. Woody's laughter, which had been stifling its desire to be heard, joined in with the game of merriment as it had been keeping itself subdued because of Evan's angry charade. Fate laughed so much that he felt as though he just had to sit down on the bench. With the boy in the middle, not really understanding what they were laughing at, all three continued to laugh until the trip joke, which was beginning to feel a little bit annoyed, wandered off down the road to spend time with someone a little more sensible. Once they had stopped laughing and Evan regained his composure, he took the chance to ask Fate a question before the laughter came walking back up the road with a stick in order to poke fun at the ones who had ridiculed it. "How was it that no matter how hard I tried, I could not get to somewhere that at first did not appear that far away?" "That's the thing about the past, it just keeps moving further away," was Fate's one-dimensional response. He then asked, "Do you mind if I ask you why it was so important for you to get to the past?" "I was hoping to see somebody who I haven't seen in quite a while." Then he tenderly rubbed the glass of the watch he was wearing, which had miraculously survived the fall without collecting even a single scratch. Who were you hoping to see? Evan glanced at Woody, sat between them, and then he looked at Faith, frowned, and shook his head a little to let Faith know that he did not want to talk about it in front of the boy. Faith looked at Evan in order to try and relay the message that he would sort them out some privacy at their earliest convenient moment. Woody interrupted their silent conversation. "Can you smell that?" "Yes, now you come to mention it," said Faith. "I have been catching the occasional hint of a rather unpleasant odour." All three noses gently sniffed the air, trying to locate the whereabouts of the offending smell, which was becoming more offensive as their inquisition progressed. After a few more moments, both Evan and Woody seemed to be in agreement that the smell was coming from the general direction of Fate. They turned their heads in unison and accusingly looked at him. "What? It's not me." Still the eyes of indictment continued with their accusation, and still Fate was in denial. "I'm telling you, it's not me." He then stood up in order to distance himself from the awful smell. Fate had to admit to himself that the disgusting smell was close at hand, and then he pointed at the canvas bag. "It's coming from in there," he informed them. "Go and see what's making that awful stink," said Fate, looking at Woody. "I'm not opening it." "It's your bag," proclaimed Evan and Fate simultaneously. Evan got up and stood next to Fate and further placed the responsibility of opening the bag on the boy by adding, "You're the nearest one to it, so you have to be the one to open it." Woody realised that he had been outmanoeuvred and that the task of opening the bag was going to be his. He turned his head slightly in disgust as he poked around inside the bag with his index finger. He located the source of the stench and hoisted it into the air. He then asked, "Would anybody like a corned beef sandwich?" as he held the offending polythene bag and its contents out at arm's length. "Catch!" he cried as he tossed the bag in the direction of Fate and Evan. They parted like two well-coordinated dancers, and the once appetizing sandwich, which had now been reduced to the status of a festering unwelcome-ness, fell to the floor. From where Evan was standing, he could see into the canvas bag, and it was obvious by the dark, damp patches that the sandwich had seeped into it. "You're going to need a new bag," he informed the boy, who had no other option but to agree that it was the end of the line for his grandfather's bag. "Why don't you take both the bags and place them in a little bin?" Fate suggested. "There's one up the road, around the bend," he informed the boy. "Okay," agreed Woody, with a crinkled up nose, knowing that he would have to handle the corned beef sandwich. "I saw it earlier and I was going to put my rubbish in it then, but we seemed to be in such a hurry, so I didn't bother." "Well, there is no rush now, so take your time. We will be here having a little chat," Fate told him, wanting to see what was on Evan's mind. Having picked up the rotting canvas bag and placed the remains of the soggy sandwich inside, Woody went to dispose of them up the road. Fate sat back down on the bench. "Come," said Fate, patting the bench. "Tell me why getting to the past was so important to you." "To be honest," said Evan, as he sat down next to Fate, "I feel a bit stupid now, and I'm worried that you might laugh at me." "Don't be silly. I do not laugh at my friends unless they have just been on an amusing trip. Come on, trust me. Maybe I can help." "I do trust you. It's just that—" Evan was having difficulty saying what he wanted to say. Fate looked at him and assured him that whatever he said was between them, and that he would help in whatever way he could, with the man's worries. Evan thought that so far Fate had been very fair and decent, so he told Fate what was bothering him. "You see this watch?" he asked, as he removed the timepiece from his wrist. "It means the world to me." He turned it over, revealing an inscription on its back. "To my ever-loving son." "And look at this," he said proudly, as he turned the watch back over, revealing its face. He lifted it close to Fate and then pointed to where the number 12 ought to be. Fate looked at the watch and saw that the number 1 and the 2 were in each other's place. "My mother bought me this for my 21st birthday. She had a jeweller rearrange the number 12. It's waterproof and shockproof as well." "It must be to survive that fall," Fate suggested, trying to put his friend at ease, so he'd continue with the reveal. Evan smiled half-heartedly and then stopped talking while he fastened the watch back onto his wrist, looking rather melancholic and distant. "She died a week before my birthday. Cancer of the lymph gland." Evan suppressed the tears that were burning in the back of his eyes. "I think that's why she spent so much money on this watch. She wanted to get me something that would last. Plus, she knew she wouldn't be around to ever buy me another present." Evan looked at Fate and tried to smile. A feeble effort, really. Then continued to explain. "I don't remember telling her at the end that I love her, and I wish I had. I think that maybe she believed that I somehow blamed her for the brutality." Evan sucked in a breath of air and continued. "They used to call my father the big man, you know. Surprisingly gentle he was before he drank down the whiskey that turned him into a monster. No excuse. I hate him." He lifted his hand towards his throat and massaged his Adam's apple, as though trying to send the pain away from his throat, back down into his heart, where he believed it belonged. "I feel as though the older I got, the less I told her that I love her. I just thought that if I could go back to that last day and see her, I could tell her that I love her. But we had a deal about not showing sorrow at the end. I know that if I'd have said, 'I love you, Ma,' then I would have broken down." Evan took a deep breath and then told Fate that he felt as though he could tell her now without breaking down. Having finished explaining himself to Fate, Evan wiped away any telltale signs of tears which were begging to differ about Evan's ability to control his deepest emotions. "Sometimes loving son, occasionally loving son. Is that the inscription on the watch? Or does it read, 'To my ever-loving son'?" Evan was about to throw his arms around his mentor when he saw that the boy was returning, and so he thought better of it and squeezed Fate's wrist in order to thank him. After all, he did not want young Woody asking any awkward questions. Woody was looking puzzled and obviously had something on his mind. As he was throwing the rubbish and the bags into the bin, he had decided that the only decent thing to do was to give the worms their freedom back. Only on opening the tin, he had discovered that they had already made good their escape. "Are you all right?" asked Fate. "Yes, thank you," replied Woody, not wanting to bother anybody with the whereabouts of the escapology worms, which had somehow twisted the lid off the tin, escaped, and then even more amazingly had twisted the lid back on. "Do you mind if I ask you a personal question?" Fate inquired of the boy. "No, I suppose not," he replied warily, hoping that it would not be too personal. "When was the last time that you told your mum that you love her?" Before Evan had time to object to Fate's question, Woody replied, "Last week, On my birthday. Then he added, in a most unaffected manner, I'm always telling her. Good. Never think that you're too old to tell her. I won't. Love flooded Evan's heart, and the boy's comments alleviated his unwarranted guilt. Thank you, he silently mouthed to Fate. Having been reminded that it was the youngster's birthday last week, and thinking that it was best to steer the conversation in a slightly different direction, Fate inquired about the boy's birthday gifts. What did your mother buy you for your birthday? Some books for school, he told them. What did Mum get you? He asked Evan, realizing that it must have been the man's birthday too. There was silence. Evan was stunned. Fate was speechless. Woody stood there, full of innocence, waiting for a reply to his question, unaware of the impact that the answer would have upon him. Still the boy waited, and still Evan's words remained silent, unaware of what they should say, while his thoughts scurried around erratically, trying to find somewhere to hide. Oh God, what have we done? What have we said? Asked Evan of himself. He desperately wondered how to explain to an 11-year-old boy that the mother he loved so much would die of cancer in 10 years' time. What have we said? And then Fate somehow managed to come up with an answer, a rescue plan to overcome the awkward predicament which their question had snared them in. We can't tell you that, young man. Why not? Pursued the youngster. Because if we told you what he got, then it was part of a birthday surprise for you later on when you are older. After all, it's no fun unwrapping a present if you already know what it is. Where's the element of surprise? Oh yes, of course, agreed Woody. He then thanked them for their consideration. Evan looked at Fate and again silently thanked him for pulling him out of the tragedy which they had inadvertently orchestrated. Well, I'm ready for you two, said Woody, eager to continue on their exciting journey, his energy level replenished after his nap. They all started walking up the road, with Evan pausing and turning for one last look at the terracotta chimney pots and what might have been. Just a minute, Woody said, lifting his foot from the ground, showing Fate the lace which had come undone. He knelt down in order to fasten it, while Fate stepped back 2 paces. Evan started walking again, unaware of the boy who was still crouched down, tying his lace. Evan tripped over his young self and knocked on his leg a couple of times to avoid kneeing Woody in the face. And then, after performing some very fancy footwork and arm-waving, he regained his balance. Phew, phew, he whistled. My fault. Yes, it was your fault, confirmed Fate, and let that be a lesson to you this time. What lesson? You cannot move forward if you are looking back at your past. Apparently not, conceded Evan. He then looked at his mentor, thinking how perceptive he was, and yet he could not help but wonder if perhaps he could have been taught the lessons without the trip down memory lane. He further wondered if the temperate disfigurement of his face held another deeper lesson. Was there any reason why I had to learn about the past via the accident? To be honest, the fall was down to your carelessness. Nothing planned, it was just one of those things. The injuries were collateral damage, as it were. And then he carried on walking. As Evan, Woody, and Fate advanced towards their futures, Woody walked and skipped a little while smiling at all the fun they were having. Fate felt content. He was happy with the progress that they were making and the lessons which his companions were both learning. Evan's heart was lighter now that he knew about Woody telling his mother that he loves her. He also felt extremely pleased that the injuries to his face were all agreeably healed. How lucky I am, he thought, and he was. But all that would change when he was taught a punishing, painful lesson by the malevolent entity who would hurt him physically and inflict brutal emotional chastisement upon him for being the thief that he was.